New York City, 1984. 5 bullets were fired into 4 black teenagers 3 days before Christmas on the number 2 train by one white man with a legally owned handgun. The incident divided the city into people who believed that the so-called subway vigilante was right in his actions and others who believed it was a racist act of violence. The shooter says he acted out of fear, but was it self-defense or was it revenge? For InsideEdition.com, I'm Sal Bono, and this is New York Gritty.
If you take a rat and you corner it, and you, let's say just one time, you start poking it with red hot needles, and the rat doesn't know how to react, and you do this, okay? And you wind up doing it again, or perhaps again. And if once in a while a rat turns viciously on you and just becomes a total vicious killer, which is really what I was.
Racial tensions are always on the simmer in New York City, always. And then something happens that brings it to a boil. And Bernhard Goetz brought it to the biggest boil anybody could remember.
Since it opened in 1904, the subway system has been the veins and arteries of New York City.
Subway's the equalizer. It's the only way to get around, and it's always been that way. You can't wait for a cab, so like it or not, that's what you did if you wanted to get someplace fast. And that meant that a whole population of the city would be down there with you.
You were trapped, basically in a dirty recycled beer can hurtling along the tracks.
When you rode the subways in the 1980s, you kept your eyes open. You didn't bury yourself in a book. There was crack cocaine. It's just beginning to come around. Even the police were afraid of people with crack cocaine. There was graffiti all over the place.
I think it's the most disgusting thing that New York City has.
To talk about New York City in 1984, you have to go back a little bit further. You had the economic catastrophe in New York in the 1970s when the city was on the verge of bankruptcy. By the 1980s, there was a recovery of sorts going on, but like all recoveries, it was wildly uneven. Rich people were doing better, but people at the bottom of the economic rung remained at the bottom. You also started to see a rise in street crime in New York. There was more physical confrontation on the street, assaults, unarmed robberies, some armed robberies. You began to see a lot more guns in New York City than you saw before.
One man who experienced this firsthand was a downtown resident named Bernhard Goetz, a 37-year-old self-employed electronics repairman who lived and worked out of his apartment.
Bernie had been mugged in the past. He was injured. He helped cops capture one of the guys who attacked him. The other guy got away. One of 2 got away. Bernie spent more time filing the police report than this guy spent in custody, apparently. I think he was charged with damaging Bernie's clothing, and he was infuriated by that.
So infuriated that after that 1981 incident, he purchased a handgun, despite being denied a permit to own. He carried it with him everywhere, including into that subway.
In a lot of ways, he's a classic New Yorker. He was afraid. He was a fearful man who'd been hurt once. He didn't want to be hurt again, and he was going to protect himself in the worst way possible. He was the worst person that those guys could have approached.
Mr. Goetz, why these 4? Why these 4?
Oh, isn't that beautiful? You asked the question in an intellectual way. Why these 4?
Why these 4?
I didn't pick out these 4. I never met those guys. I told you have it in here. I never met them.
Why these 4, though? I mean,
Because I saw what they were intending to do with me, miss. Miss, they were intending to play with me, like a cat plays with a mouse.
On December 22nd, 1984, Bernie Goetz was riding the number 2 train headed downtown. He shared the subway with 4 black teenagers. Goetz says one of the teens struck up a conversation with him, and as they were talking, the teenager demanded $5. That's when Goetz got up, opened up his jacket, pulled out his gun, and shot at all 4 of them.
Everything is chaos on the subway. The conductor comes up to Bernie and says, "Are you a cop?" And Bernie says, "No, I'm not a cop." Apparently the conductor wanted to take the gun from him, and instead, and this is a really remarkable part of the story, Bernie got out of the train and ran on the tracks to Chambers Street. Got to his apartment, got some of his clothes together, rented a car, and took off.
Bernie Goetz surrendered to authorities in New Hampshire, saying he was the man the NYPD was looking for.
The man who shot and wounded 4 teenagers in a subway car 9 days ago after they allegedly demanded money. Today, a man turned himself in and said he is the vigilante.
Vigilantism will not be tolerated in this city. You're not going to have instant justice meted out by anybody, because that's not justice.
Look, if I had more bullets, I would have shot them all again and again.
But this suspect didn't remain silent. He sat for a taped interrogation and made chilling revelations.
My problem was I ran out of bullets, and I was gonna gouge one of the guy's eyes out with my keys afterwards. You can't understand this. I know you can't understand this. That's fine. The only reason I didn't do it is because he had changed his luck.
While Goetz was on the run, the 4 people he shot were all being treated for their extensive injuries. 19-year-old Troy Canty, who asked Goetz for the money, was shot in the midsection. 19-year-old James Ramseur was hit in the arm and chest. 18-year-old Barry Allen was shot in the back. Goetz initially missed 19-year-old Darrell Cavey, who laid on the floor of the subway car pretending to be hurt, but that act didn't save him.
I was sure I'd shot him. It was funny. I wanted to give an honest answer. I want to know if I missed, but I went to him the second time, and I looked at him. And he can't verify this because he was probably out of it by then. If I had shot him or if he wasn't, I don't know. And I said, you seem to be doing all right. Here's another.
Goetz then shot him in the back, severing his spinal cord.
Goetz claimed he shot 4 youths while defending himself against being robbed in a New York subway last December. He was charged only with carrying an illegal weapon by a first New York grand jury. Now, a second grand jury has decided he will be tried for attempted murder and assault in addition to the gun charge.
And the amazing thing about that was once people got an image of Bernie Goetz, people had been imagining Charles Bronson in Death Wish, and they were imagining Clint Eastwood in Make My Day, and instead you got Woody Allen with a .38. What's going on?
The indictment of Bernhard Goetz did not end the debate among citizens.
Well, I don't think he should be put in jail for protecting himself.
You people have put upon him the label of vigilante. I put the label as just a guy with a scared guy, a scared citizen.
Goetz's surrender brought a wave of sympathy, even from the mother of one of the victims.
I would say to him that I'm sorry about the state of our society.
The feeling in New York City was really divided. There were people who thought it's about time somebody did something, because these 4 guys were not choir boys. They all had records of some kind. Not major crimes, they didn't kill anybody, but they had records, and apparently they were on their way to rob an arcade somewhere. This is the story that came out. Well, he did the right thing, but other people said, you can't do that. You can't shoot at people for asking for panhandling.
We think 5 criminally minded people met on the subway that day. When he put the gun in his pocket, he became the people he was fighting. He broke the law.
People are tired. Working people are tired of riding the subways and being assaulted.
Goetz made bail and went home to await his trial while his legal team mounted his defense. Attorney Mark Baker says he felt his client had said enough in the taped police interview and wouldn't put him on the witness stand.
He made that foolish statement.
And I said, you seem to be doing all right. Here's another.
You seem to be all right. Here's another, which the district attorney exploited and put in the public file in order to change the public attitude towards Bernie Goetz and turn the populace against him.
The district attorney orchestrated this one the same way he usually orchestrates major indictments.
And he was potentially volatile. He had a temper, and he was very indignant about the fact that he was even charged with this.
This case is really more about deterioration in society than it is about me.
The jury listened to Goetz's police interview in court. In the end, they acquitted him of attempted murder charges and only convicted him on the firearms charge.
Goetz showed no emotion, his lawyer making it clear the case would go no further.
Everybody's got opinions in a case like this. But unless you're in the courtroom for 7 weeks and you hear the evidence from the witness stand and you see the demonstrations in the well of the courtroom and you go out into that subway, which the jury did in that confined space, walking around imagining themselves in Bernie Goetz's position, you don't have a right to an opinion in my view. You've got to have the evidence. I don't think if these kids were black, brown, yellow, purple, he would have acted any differently. He believed, and the jury accepted that belief, that he was about to be beaten up. Not so much robbed, but beaten up.
Did they get what they deserved?
Oh, that's a very complicated question. I think that they were playing a very dangerous game, and they paid the price.
Bernhard Goetz served 250 days in prison, but after he was released, he didn't just go away. He played up his newfound fame, gave media interviews, and ran for political office, including mayor and public advocate. He lost both races. The current public advocate for New York City, Jumaane was just 8 years old when Goetz shot the 4 men.
It's hard to take race out of incidences like this. Folks try to do it, but the question is if it was 4 young white men, would it have the same result given even the same circumstances? And it's hard to think that it would have, particularly with the venom afterwards. And so even if there was a fear, even if you thought you were going to be mugged, when you see black skin, the response is so much more violent. The response is so much extra, and you see that from all over, from Bernhard Goetz to police shootings.
Years later, the mother of Daryl Cabey filed a civil suit against Goetz on behalf of her son, who was paralyzed from the waist down from the shooting. While waiting for paramedics to arrive, Cabey's oxygen supply had been cut off, causing him permanent brain damage. Attorney Ron Kuby represented the Cabeys in the civil lawsuit.
There was no allegation that anybody, let alone Bernhard Goetz, made that Daryl Cabey engaged Goetz, looked at Goetz, said anything to Goetz, approached Goetz. The only thing that Daryl Cabey did wrong, according to Bernhard Goetz, was he was with the other guys. And we didn't think withism without more warranted a shot in the back.
The Cabeys won their case, and a jury awarded them $43 million. Bernhard Goetz later declared bankruptcy and has yet to pay any part of the award.
Fundamentally, he was the very person that he accused his victims of being. His was the ultimate projection.
But the 1984 incident is part of a trend in this country that lingers today, as unarmed black people continue getting shot and their shooters often get acquitted of wrongdoing.
I would bet money if there were 4 young white men and people, even if they were going to rob them, say they just came back from maybe NYU or something and they were shot, there'd be a lot of remorse. I think the value of black life is not that high in American society.
Bernhard Goetz declined to participate in this story, saying he is not giving interviews at this time.
Now he's 71 years old, supposedly still living in New York, and you just picture him if he's on a subway. He'd probably look like a really harmless old man. But don't ask him for $5.